last time, and I feel like this is a journey that we're probably going to discuss over and over and over again, and I feel like it's just going to continue to evolve. Currently, I am 4 months postpartum, so everything's still somewhat new to me, and I'm still trying to figure everything out. But I think it's really important for moms out there right now and future moms to be aware of things. I think a lot has to do with your previous history. So if you've had issues with depression and anxiety before, you're obviously at higher risk for this to happen, which I have had throughout pretty much my entire life. It was really bad when I was younger, under 18 years old. I'd had a lot of just anxiety and I'd get really upset and just had a lot of emotions in general, I guess you could say, that weren't always, handled the best. Um, and that all kind of came to a head. And I did have to start some meds for a little while, and they kind of just made me not feel great. But I also don't really remember why I didn't feel so great because it was so long ago. I was, you know, 17 years old. So I've always been open to trying other things, but I also don't like taking medications in general. I try to just take, more of a homeopathic route to everything. So that's kind of my history with that. We'll definitely go further into more journeys of life. Um, so you guys kind of understand how I got where I am now. But for today, we'll really just focus on that postpartum depression mainly. So I feel like my hormones were really stable throughout my pregnancy. I would get a little, boo-hooey sometimes. But other than that, I felt like my hormones were probably the most stable they've ever been. I forgot to mention before with my infertility, I did do have endometriosis and I had to have the surgery for it. Um, that was really hard and that would make my periods really difficult. But I also have Hashimoto's, so I have a thyroid disorder, and I just generally wasn't feeling well before I got pregnant. But then when I got pregnant, it was honestly the best I had felt up until like, the last, you know, 4 to 6 weeks of being pregnant. Then I was just so ginormous and uncomfortable that it was really hard to want to do anything at that point. Um, so part of part of that is just generally feeling fatigued, and that definitely came back after I had my son. So the first couple days after I had him, I feel like are just a whirlwind, right? I had an emergency C-section, and my family came to see him, and you're out of the hospital. We weren't even there for 2 days after I had a C-section. Um, because I was doing so well, I was like, I'll just go home," which didn't end up being the best idea. I had to go back in the next day, to get some diuretics because I was so fluid overloaded from having the C-section that my legs were ginormous. So the diuretics definitely helped with that, but my legs were insanely big. And, if you're a nurse, it was definitely 4 plus pitting, and it was painful, so I understand why, uh, patients get grumpy now when they have edema, it hurts. Anyways, so after that, we were at home, my husband was here, he was super helpful, pretty much I had the baby, but he would do everything for me, help me pump, he would help feed while I pumped, and I was definitely doing the pumping every 2 hours and trying to get him to latch, and my son just wouldn't latch. That ended up not working out in general. I tried for 2 months, but, um, that's another story for another day. But I felt like my emotions were really okay for, like, the first few days, and then it kinda tanked when I found out that my husband was gonna have to go back to work right away. A and I just was so emotional about it, and I didn't feel like I knew what I was doing and that I could do it by myself, and I was so, so upset that I remember right the day before he had to go back in, I just remember being in the shower just crying, not any specific reason other than the fact that I had no idea what I had got myself into or what I was doing, and I was just scared, to be honest. He's always super supportive and came and just, "On my back, what do you need?" Always great. But that was really difficult, and then when he was gone, I was a hot mess. I had no routine. We have 3 dogs, all of them with their own unique individual personalities that can be difficult to handle sometimes when they're in the masses, and I'm trying to deal with this newborn, and we're introducing the baby to them, and that was it went really well. The dogs do really well with him, but that was hard because you never know the way they're going to react, and they had never been around babies, and hardly been around children in general, to be honest. So that's always difficult and scary, and then just really trying to figure out your routine. I think one thing we forget just about moms in general, and I know it's probably just as difficult for younger moms, but definitely for older moms, you have been doing the same thing and for yourself for so long that changing up your routine can be very difficult. I struggled so bad with not just being able to get up and go do whatever I wanted to do, or you know, um, just like, "Oh, I have a baby, so I can't just, walk to the mailbox or, just jump in my car and go to the gas station." Like, all those things are out the window, and I really struggled with that loss of independence, I think, because my entire life I have been so independent. I don't love it getting help from people. I love it doing things by myself. I love figuring things out. I love staying busy. Um so that was really hard for me. And in this situation, one way I've always dealt with my depression and anxiety is that I kind of ignore it, to be honest, which isn't healthy, right? But I'll throw myself into other people. What do you need? What do you need? I'll do that. I'll do that for you. I'll do this for you. I'll do that. I'll work, 16 hours. I'll work 10 shifts a week. You know what I mean? I'll do all of these things, and I would just try to avoid myself and my emotions. Um, and my last relationship, I felt like that's how I dealt with things a lot, is just throwing myself constantly into other things, trying to help him, trying to help my family, trying to help everybody around me, working, going to school. Like, I would always just throw myself into things to try to ignore how I was feeling, and really, addressing the issue, so it never really got better. And it took me a really long time to get out of those situations. So that's hard. And when that's how you've dealt with situations before like that, you can't do that with the baby. You can't just ignore the situation or go to work 16-hour days. Like, you have to be there for your child. And that was really hard for me too. And then I had all these guilty feelings because I'd always wanted to have children. And now here I am, not knowing if I could do it, having these emotions of loss of independence and feeling sad and having trouble connecting with the baby too. Like, he's really mine. You keep expecting them to go home or, you know, uh, I really struggled with that, like connecting and him being mine. And then I felt bad about that too. It's just this constant back and forth and this just deep, dark hole. After that first couple weeks, my mom came into town, and that was actually super helpful. I was able to sleep a little bit because she could take the baby. Um, she helped while she had him. I could deal with the dogs and clean the house and do all, pay the bills and do all the things that needed to be done. Um, that I like to do. I wanna make that very clear that that's not an expectation by my husband that I do that. That is what I like to do. I love cleaning. I hate cooking. He does that. Um, I love, like, making sure the bills are paid and checking all of those boxes. I'm just a very tasky person, so those are things that I love to do. Just wanna put that out there. He will do anything I need, which is fantastic. But my mom came into town, and she was really helpful, just being there. So I wanna put that out there too because I'm a person like, "No, no, 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 I don't need help, I don't need help." accept the help from people, if they want to come help clean your house, if they want to watch the baby for a couple hours. I think all of those things are so extremely important that you take advantage of so that you have that time for you. I think it's really difficult for people to take that help, but you need it. And I wish I had done more of it. And I always do this in life. I wish I had done this. I wish I had done that. I wish I had this. So please just take that and just take the help that you can get. It's definitely worth it and it's best for you and baby. So then after my mom left, I felt like it was in a pretty good place because when she was there, I was able to get in a pretty good routine with Odin and, the dogs and everything. So I felt like after she left, I did pretty well for a little bit. And then the emotions just started coming back again. Everything, Odin got really bad colic. So he was just screaming all the time. He was never comfortable. He was always just so gassy and spitty uppy and just not doing great. And he kept doing this thing where it sounded like he had like stridor and like this like shriek thing, like he was like a little T-Rex or something. And so we ended up taking him into the doctor. My husband thought he knew what it was, and he did. And I honestly can't pronounce it to save my life, but it's like a floppy voice box. So that was helping cause the GERD, and then he's also tongue-tied, which explained part of the reason why he couldn't breastfeed. He just wasn't latching. He wasn't doing well. So both of those two things on top of each other, latching and all of it wasn't working. So he's definitely bottle fed. Um, but we took him to the doctor. They were able to give us a prescription for Pepcid, which definitely did help. And we've been giving some methadone to help with all the gas bubbles so we could get him out easier because he wasn't burping at all either. And um, we also got some tips like you can put the head of the bed up a little bit. You can roll up a blanket underneath their mattress a tiny bit so that they can keep their head up, which helped a lot. But that definitely he wasn't sleeping, so then I wasn't sleeping, and that just like made the emotions pitfall even more than they already were. Once that started to get better, I felt better for a little while. During that time though, there was the breaking point for me. Um, I threw on one of my husband's shirts. I had these pants on that we had like, tried to cut because they were way too long for me when I was pregnant, but they were big and they were cheap and on sale. So we tried to like cut the bottoms so that they'd fit me, and they ended up being like these uneven high waters. And, um, I had these fuzzy slippers on, my hair in a mess, makeup everywhere. I'm crying. I have my, hands-free breast pumps on, and I put the baby in the car because he would only go to sleep when we were driving sometimes, but I wouldn't drive at night because people drive like psychopaths anyway, and I can't see at night. So I waited until the sun came up, got in my car looking like that. He instantly went to sleep, and I mean, I'm just a hysterical mess calling my husband, you know, telling him everything and having a breakdown. And all I can imagine was, like, just getting pulled over by a police officer and just imagining what, like, that poor cop would think or what they would say if they saw me like that. So then I was worried I was gonna get pulled over or something looking a hot mess. Um, so that was kinda one of my breaking points with everything, but then everything started to get better, like I said, and I was really good for a few weeks, and my emotions felt better, and my hormones felt pretty stable, and then it just kinda all came crashing back, like, a couple weeks before I had to go back to work, and I do think that that was part of it, just even thinking about having to go back to work gave me anxiety, and sometimes I honestly felt like I couldn't breathe, but I would just be like, it's gonna get better, everything's gonna get better, and everything didn't get better. So a few days before I was supposed to start work again, I reached out to one of my friends who works in the clinic with my provider, and she was able to get me in to have a visit with her. And my provider is the best. She's super supportive and always listens and is extremely non-judgmental, which is very helpful to be open to her. And she, listened, and she did help get me started on meds. I was trying to avoid that in the beginning, and I feel like if I had done this sooner, I would already be seeing, the positive effects of everything. Medications take 6 to 8 weeks to really start kicking in. This one, I felt like it's given me a little bit more energy so far, but I'm not really feeling, better mentally quite yet. I know that I have the support there, and I know that the light's at the end of the tunnel, but I definitely think it just would have been better if I had reached out sooner. So I think that's a huge part of why I'm telling you this is because I feel like once again, you are just supposed to be happy after you have a baby and you're supposed to be thankful and it's just supposed to be easy and just to do all of these things. They say, breastfeed, all of these things, and it's not. I'm struggling. I think other people struggle a lot, and for new mamas, I think it's just important that you really know to reach out as soon as you can. As soon as you start feeling like that, reach out to your provider, not even to start on medications, but maybe just to let them know how you're feeling or, get somebody to talk to. And definitely always reach out to your family, your spouse, whoever is the most supportive for you so that you can feel heard and just have them listen. I always tell people I don't want you to do this for me. I'm not asking you to fix this for me. I just need you to listen. Sometimes I just need to get it out. So I think that's just a big part of why I'm telling you this is just reach out, know that people are there, you're not alone. You can reach out to me anytime. I'm on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook. I have my own website that has like contact us on it and it goes straight to my email that nobody else sees. And that's at www.geriatric-mom.com. And then I do have my podcast on Spotify now for easier listening. But I think this is just gonna obviously be an ongoing journey, and I'm definitely gonna keep you updated on how it goes. The medication I started on personally was sertraline, which is also called Zoloft. Um, and we'll see how it goes to, hopefully show some good improvements over time. One thing I like about my provider, is that she is aware of my previous history. I have endometriosis, I have my autoimmune disorder, Hashimoto's for my thyroid. And she did check all of those labs to make sure, you know, my Hashimoto's wasn't off so that we weren't just, trying to fix a problem that wasn't going to be. And there was something also interesting that she did check that I wanted to mention, which is the Epstein Barr virus, which is mono, and you can be chronically infected, which can cause fatigue, which I was feeling before I got pregnant. And then once I was pregnant, I felt better, which I've heard happens with people with autoimmune disorders. And then she saw it, so it was positive, and so that it just kind of makes me feel better to know that I'm not just being a baby because I am a very tough person. I'm not one that likes to sit there and boohoo and poor and pity me and all of that. But it's like, why do I feel like this? I don't feel good. Why don't I feel good? So she was able to give me some tips on how to help with that chronic fatigue. So I did order those things to try to see if they help. I'll definitely keep you updated on that too. I think there's more discussions about life that need to be told so that you guys have an understanding of, you know, depression and anxiety and how those things come about. And I just think that people's journey throughout their lives is how, you know, people learn and you learn different things, what works and what doesn't. And just, um, I think it's really good to know you're not alone. So once again, thank you for listening. This is Geriatric Mom, where real moms share the unedited truth, find joy in the chaos, and reminding each other we're all in this together. Once again, my website is www.geriatric-mom.com. Sorry. Have a good day.